A warm welcome back to my channel. Having just completed an epic endurance bike challenge, I'm going to talk you through in this video how I prepared for that endurance challenge, which may in turn help you to prepare for that endurance challenge. So it's all about how to get ready, yeah? But before I go into that wonderful content, if you are new here or if you're a regular viewer and haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing, click on that button. And if you have enjoyed this video, found it entertaining, informational in some way, then please do give it a thumbs up. So let's crack on with the content. Yes, as with all my content that I do on these videos, it's all about having a theme, and the theme and the key word for today's video is ready. Getting ready, ever ready, whatever ready. But there's 4 types of ready to get ready for, yeah? And that is, the first one I'll be talking about is, are you ready? The second one is your bike ready, yeah? Number 3, have you got the course ready? And number 4, last but not least, maybe one of the most important, but they're all important, is get your gear ready. So let's crack on and show how I got ready. Yeah. So number one is, are you ready? Was I ready? Having recently completed, if you've been watching regularly, it was 330 kilometers, 205 miles in one day, yeah, from sunrise to sunset. So for me to be ready, I had to ensure that I had a level of fitness, and this had taken me, to get to that level of fitness, it taken many years. It wasn't just an overnight thing. So my fitness I had to consider. Confidence was definitely an important thing. How I built my confidence up. I think a couple of years ago I'd done my first mega challenge on the bike, where I'd literally just been loaned a bike a few days before on the Isle of Man and cycled the Lighthouse Challenge, which is 105 miles, and that took me nearly 9 hours, over 9 hours I think, which is a long time to do 105 miles. So if you equate that to what I'd done last week, then it would have taken me 18 hours of cycling, but I've done it considerably quicker because basically I got myself more fit. But one of the key things in terms of getting ready is, what I'd done is slowly built up the distance in rides, and the planning was through over the past few months. I didn't do any journeys. I'm on a journey to do the 330 or over 200 miles. Yeah, I just went out and done it, but I had prepared all the way through before. And a lot of it, you would have seen some of my rides where I started doing, I think last year when I got the my new bike to do the Midlands Velo, which was a 100-mile ride. Again, I may have been ill prepared, but I got myself a proper bike. But from then I'd been slowly building up the distances, you know, doing a 10k ride, then a 20k, 30k, 50k, and that was I think I'd done Ledbury back to home, and that was about 70k, and that was the furthest I'd done. Having moved down to London, I was then stepping it up, getting back in the confidence in the distances, the 70k's, then 100k, and that was a big deal for me. And then I remember back in May, to see whether I could do over 200, I thought I need to do over 100, and that's where I'd done the 120 miles around Cambridge and around Essex, and managed that. Learnt a lot of things, but that got me ready. And also things in being ready is, was I ready to deal with any emergencies or repairs that I needed to do? Am I proficient to do that? So that's how I got myself ready, and maybe you can get yourself ready in the same way. So number 2 I talk about is your bike ready? Yeah, have you got a bike? It might be worth going out to decide what kind of bike you get. Now, the bike I had was a Giant Contend SL2 disc, which for a lot of people watching this may not mean much. But for me, it was when I went to the bike shop knowing I was going to do the Birmingham Velo 100 miles. I asked them, because the local bike stores, they know their stuff. Yeah, they're cyclists, they know what's going on. And I said, this is the kind of riding I want to do. So the Contend is what I call an all-round bike. So it's great for all types of things. It's not a specialist for speed, not a specialist for long distance, but it's an all-rounder. So I made sure I had the right bike, and that was serviced and ready to do these distances. Also, I needed to ensure that I could do puncture repairs, and I had the right spares, inner tubes, spare inner tubes, and so on and so forth if that did happen during the ride. Thankfully for me, during that 205 mile, I didn't get that. But again, it's about having the right gear and ensuring that part of the bike being ready. It's not just the frame and the forks and all that, but it's the wheels, the tyres, the types of tyres that you have helps reduce the amount of punctures you could have. And I could do a whole talk on those and what helps and reduces it, but basically making sure that the bike is ready for that type of distance. Make sense? Yeah. So number three, is your course ready? Yeah, is your course ready? Now, the course is out there. What I mean is your course ready? Have I planned it? Have I routed it? Do I know where I'm going to go? Well, basically, I had a vague idea where to go, but if you watch the video, I said all that was leading me was my Garmin. So what I'd done is, and there's all sorts of different types of software available out there that you can plan routes. What I used is within Garmin Connect, there's a application in there where you can plot courses, whether it be running courses, cycling courses, all types of courses. So I plotted a cycling course. And for me, when I was planning that course, planning the route, I needed to ensure a whole host of things, because we're in this pandemic type stuff. There was a number of things that I needed to consider. One was I had to get back to where I was starting from, where I was staying, where I was living here in London. So I knew it was going to be an out and back course, or a circular course starting and finishing at my home. So I needed to plot the route, and I felt comfortable when I'd done that 120 miler heading out towards Cambridge. The route for the 205 almost dropped on my lap, because I looked at the map of Britain, and by the time I'd got to Cambridge, I'm sort of halfway across, cutting through the whole of East Anglia. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice to get to the other end of the coast? Yeah. And when I looked at that as King's Lynn, plotted it back, and almost to the mile, it was just over 200 miles. So I thought, that's my route. And within that route planner, I wanted to ensure that I wasn't on any main roads or any trunk roads, or reduced it as much as possible, and that application does that for you automatically. So I thought, well, that's the route, so why not? Yeah, why not do that? So that was the actual planning the route itself. The other thing I needed to plan for when I was looking at that route is food and drink. Now, whilst I'd packed all the food that I reasonably needed for that particular route, because it's a long way, I knew I was going to be out for the whole day, you know, from 5 in the morning till 9 at night. That's a long time. What, 16 hours? So with this lockdown, I needed to ensure that there was places, and there's no way, it's physically impossible to carry off. Whilst I had 2 bidoons with the bottles of water, there was nowhere near that, nowhere physically impossible to carry enough water for the whole day, especially in that heat. So I needed to ensure that there was places where I could stop and purchase water, which was mainly petrol stations, service stations en route. Because of the lockdown, the towns were pretty much shut and there wasn't much going on, but a lot of the roads I was cycling along, there was regular service stations, and you would have seen me stop at one near Ely, I think one in Cambridge, another one in Bishop Stortford. So on that route, King's Lynn, I found that chip shop, so that was quite fortuitous for the lunch and top up of water. but that's part of planning the route, and it was important for me to know that I could get back. And as part of that route for me, for the planning, is emergencies can happen, or I might suddenly decide, well, I've got as far as I can go, I've really had enough. So all the way I had what I call get out of jail cards. So at any point along the route there was regular, I say regular, if you say 20 miles is regular, I was within a certain distance of a train station where I could get to the train station and basically head back down to London. And despite all this COVID I did have a face cover and everything, so I was prepared for that if I needed to do that. But one of the key things on the course, as I say, is ensuring that you're familiar with the route and that the sat nav was able to do that, which leads me on to all the gear and being ready. So sorry as I get distracted by what those dogs are doing, but hey, anyway, that's what dogs do. So that was me making sure my course was ready, and I felt comfortable with that and was ready to go. So it's important to plan the route, replan the route, try some of the routes. As I say, for me, I'd already done that route going up to Cambridge and coming back, so in my mind I was reasonably comfortable with that part of the route. It was just getting from Cambridge up to King's Lynn. But anyway, that was another thing. Right, on to the last but fourth part. He's after his fish, isn't he? Hey, oi, oi. Anyway, on to the fourth and final point, which could be the most crucial in terms of the success and failure of the actual trip, and that is getting your gear ready, all the gear, and having every idea. And I touched on it on some of the other points in terms of having the route. So for me, the Garmin was an essential piece of gear, because I don't know about you, but could you memorize a 205 mile route along some B roads, minor roads and whatever? I guess we could in some way, or the old days where we had a map, but we got the technology, so it was important for me to have that Garmin. And as well as that Garmin, I'd found out from my 120 miler that the juice, the battery sort of runs out after a certain amount of time, so I packed a USB charger with my gear to ensure that and it did happen a few times where the Garmin wasn't playing ball, and at one point I think it just decided to switch itself off, but I salvaged the route, so the route was in there and it tends to pick up. It is the version I have of it, I think it's the 820 Edge, and they don't make that anymore, is the GPS used to drop out a couple of times, both going out and coming back, and I mentioned it sort of first world problems. But as long as you're sticking close to the route and you've got the map in front of you, it's pretty relatively straightforward to follow. You just need to ensure that when you come into junctions that you're slow enough for it to pick up where to move. But on the whole, I would say out of the 330 kilometers, I would say it was navigating me correctly for about 250k. And yes, I did need that USB charger because I was properly running flat on the battery. So that was the actual Garmin. In terms of preparing the gear for the weather, and part of the planning that I wanted to ensure was that I knew I'd be out all day on the bike, and I didn't fancy going out in the rain. Yeah, so I had a window where I kept looking at the weather and looking at also the times, and this time of year, around, you know, end of May, June, with the summer solstice, it's the longest days. So, you know, for the month of June, and even say early May and going now into July, there's enough time to do that in daylight, whatever your distance may be. You don't have to go out and do the 205 miles. You can do 30 miles, 50 miles, whatever the distance is, because back in the day, just doing 50 miles in a day was quite a challenge for me, and that took all day. But preparing for the weather conditions, and sometimes you may not have the luxury of choosing what day you go, and you need to be prepped for it. But for me, I knew it was going to be a hot day really hot day. I wasn't expecting it to be as hot as it was. I knew that it predicted to be in the high 20s, but I wasn't expecting it to get into the high 30s in certain points where it was like going through an oven. Either way, the sun was out, so I knew I needed sun cream, so I packed sun cream in my back of the shirt, bag, slot, pocket, whatever. So I had sun cream, and also in the mornings and evenings I knew it'd be a lot chillier, so I'd purchased one of these really nice, a bit like a gilet, but it had sleeves. A gilet with sleeves, work that one out. And that was thin enough that it kept me warm. It was basically keep the wind off, keep the chill off. It was good enough to keep me warm first thing in the morning. I then took it off, and it was small enough to pack in my back pocket and then unpack it of an evening. So it's having the right gear. Food and drink, I mentioned it in the previous one, in fact, you know, having the bike ready, but it's so important to have enough food and drink and energy for you. And depending on the distance that you do, the distance I've done, as I mentioned before, it's physically impossible to carry the amount of water that you need. So that's where, in terms of having enough bottles, so I could carry 2 bottles and 2 litre, so I've got the biggest bottles I can have, not these little 500ml ones. They are proper 1 litre size, big ones, both of them full, and then fill up as I go along in different routes. But also the food, maybe a lesson learned that I would pack my own sandwiches. Maybe I need to purchase a crossbar type bag. So I did have the little bag at the back under the saddle, which had a lot of food. Most of my food bars that I had were packed in my pockets in my shirt, and I also had a little what do you call it, a bento type bag on the crossbar, on the top of the crossbar, but that was certainly not enough. And also I made sure that with the particular route that I was following, that I could stop and purchase water en route, and for me sandwiches. But I think one of the lessons learned is doing my own sandwiches and pack them, get another bag and pack the sandwiches in there. So that's those two. But the key one in terms of other gear is having a full puncture repair kit, depending on what type of wheels, tyres that you have. I had spare inner tubes, a full puncture repair kit, tyre levers and all that, so I was prepared that if I did puncture, that I had all the tools ready for me in the middle of nowhere, that I could fix them and continue. Yeah, and obviously sometimes there may be emergencies where you can't fix it, which brings me on to the other bit of gear, which is I have it with me right now. Yeah, phone. You really got to have your phone with you, absolutely essential, and in case of emergencies. So you know, it might be worth letting, well, you definitely need to let people know you're doing this route, especially if you cycle it on your own, so that they've got a reference point, and if they don't hear from you, they can call you and check if anything okay, because obviously I got delayed. So my flatmate knew I was out for the day, and I think by about 10 o'clock, when I wasn't already back yet because of the issues that I had with the police roadblocks, yeah, it's checking. Otherwise, if I'm not back, then who's gonna come and rescue you, so to speak? So I don't want to alarm you, but having the phone with you is essential. Which comes on to another point. I mentioned I had the USB charger, and that helps with charging the actual Garmin. But for me, for the phone, whilst I was on the phone all day, there was enough charge if I needed to do a call, so I didn't really need a charger for the mobile. But again, if you've got the USB charger with you, packing the cable to charge your phone is just a little bit extra to have, and good. But the one piece that I did need in terms of having all the gear, and I've learnt from my lesson, is that I didn't have, and I was expecting, I thought 16 hours is plenty time to finish it, yeah, in terms of my level of fitness, directions and so on. And the Garmin said, yeah, I should finish it. So there was lots of little mini delays all the way along the way, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and they all added up. And then with that police roadblock, you know, I lost a good hour, and that was the hour that didn't that meant I was in the dark, literally. So lights, I've now gone and purchased some great little lights which I can pack, USB charger again, and they're just there for emergencies if I need them. Although I could put the rear one on and it lasts for, I think, about 16-20 hours, these little ones. You pick them up on eBay for a £5 or £10, and they're great little things. You can purchase some really expensive ones if you want, and that are more permanent. But lights, absolutely essential, not just for the dark, but also early morning when I was going through that forest, that maybe I should have had a rear red flashing light to ensure, whilst there was very few traffic, it's important to be seen. So that's I think I've covered off all, making sure you've got your gear ready. It's so important, having all of that, and I made sure, and I went through time and time again, having done the other routes and having built up. And this is where, in terms of getting the confidence and building up, where as soon as you're getting up to around a 50k distance, you're having to carry water, food, drink, supplies with you, and also being prepared if you need to do punctures and so on and so forth. But that is, in summary, all the 4 points. And what can I conclude? Well, let's go along here and we'll talk about the conclusions. So in conclusion, I've covered the 4 key points that I needed to do to ensure that being ready, and that was, are you ready? Number 1. Number 2, is your bike ready? Number 3, is your course ready? And number 4, get your gear ready. Yeah, and having all 4 is essential, because any of those missing, maybe like myself, you can get away with it maybe on the off, but it's essential to be prepared, to be planned, to be fit and ready. But really, the essential conclusion after all is said and done, just go out and enjoy it and create memories that last a lifetime. And for me, I remember that day forever. All those little bits, and looking at the video, I can look back on that video again and again and again. Whilst it's pure, unedited, there's no fancy music or anything like that. It's just me, my memory, out there pedaling, enjoying the beautiful countryside, because we live in a wonderful world and there's so much out there to see and do and enjoy. So why not get out there and enjoy it? And I'd love to hear from you guys. What tips, info have you got that help you in terms of getting ready for, whether it be an endurance bike ride, a run, or just getting out to do a 5k around your local area? I'd love to hear from you. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye bye. Are you still here for the extra bit? For those of you who watch regularly, you may have seen in my previous video and other videos, as the months have progressed through lockdown, that my hair's been growing. It's now nearly 4 months since I've had my hair cut. So this hat isn't to cover up the hair, it's here for practical reasons, because I do love to let my hair flow. Is that it's been a bit rainy, drizzly this morning, so it's literally just to keep the speckles off. And obviously filming here in the woods, it does keep the drizzle off as well. So that's why I've got my hat on. It's more for practical reasons and the weather, rather than covering up my fabulous hair locks. Yes, I know. Just let it grow and let it flow. That's what I say. Ladies, guys.